All right, guys, welcome back to another Puzzle Streak episode. The last one we only got up to 17. So I'm going to play one more Puzzle Streak, and then I'm going to go into another practice game. Because, of course, it's not all about just puzzle streaking. It's also about putting what you learn into practice. And what I'm hoping for here is that I can get on a good streak right now, get a good puzzle streak going, get the juices flowing, so to speak. And then I will switch over and do another video, which will be a training game. So without further ado, let's get into it. We can give a check, forcing either the bishop, or really it forces the bishop there. If the rook were to go there instead, then the queen would fall. So we can give the check, forcing the bishop here. We can take that bishop with check. If the king simply moves, we win the rook. And again, if the rook moves, we win the queen. So this is a good situation. Okay. Here we've got a fork on the king and the bishop. And that looks good. Once again, fork is in motion. Is there any sense in playing anything else? I would say not. Let's take that queen. Here's a beautiful move that we can have if we want it. After queen takes, rook takes, and king takes. Well, we've won a queen for a rook, in essence. And then we'll have a queen and a bishop versus two rooks. Here again is a fork. I think we'll do that. Here we've got a check and win the queen. Here we've got another fork. This is a massive royal fork. Okay. Defended. It's the queen doing not a lot. Can we give some check, which is also attacking the bishop? I think that's what we'll do. Okay, here we've got a check, and that's a fork too. The pawn cannot recapture because it's pinned. That's nice. Now I've got a check and picking up the rook, so similar to a previous idea. Okay, white's a move here. We don't want to take this because then we get checked. We take back, and then he takes the rook. We don't want to allow him to take that rook, of course. What we could do is pin that knight, and that knight really can't be defended, except with the rook. That's a possibility. At which point, I guess we can just collect a pawn. It's possible we could just collect that pawn right now, I suppose. So we do this. If he comes here, the other thing we could consider would be this, but he can take. And after take, it doesn't lead anywhere very good. But I like this. He can't defend with bishop, can't defend with the king because of the knight, can't push this because it's pinned. So really the only way for him to defend, and there's no counterattacks anywhere, the only way for him to defend it would be this. If we then take and he takes, so bishop takes, rook takes, I guess knight takes, pawn takes, king takes. I don't really see how that's so good for us. You know, we could counterattack his rook. So he takes rook, we take rook, defending our bishop as well. But don't see how great that is. Ah, we've got this move. So we can do this, and even if he defends with the rook, we can still play this. And if he doesn't defend with the rook, we just take. Now, clearly, if we take here, if this guy moves away, we won't have a mate because his bishop is still there. But can we just take with the knight? If he takes with the pawn, we take with the bishop. And I mean, in and of itself, that's pretty good, right? Or we take, he takes, and then we use the bishop in this plane, and we're going to win the queen. So we're sitting our bishop here. We can defend it with our rook, taking a knight in the process. And if he recaptures with the rook, then we can give a check, recapture the rook, defend the bishop, and just be a piece up. Okay. He's got these connected passed pawns, which is also a material advantage. So there's definitely a temptation to think we're screwed here. Our bishop cuts the king off this way, but it's still free to move this way. But it would have to make that move immediately. So for example, if we were to take the A file and he would simply push his passed pawns, then we can give a check, which can only be blocked twice, once by the bishop and once by the rook. In both cases, we can swoop in and take, and then that would be mate, which means that after rook A1, he has to start moving his king immediately. But even then, the check will still be mate. And if we come rook A1, he needs to, in effect, maybe move this pawn. Then we've got check. He plays king H7. Then we have king H8, and it's still mate. So I think really after rook A1, he's actually going to have to, let's say, play a move like this and give up a rook. Giving up a rook. In any case, I don't see anything better. So he gives up the rook. All right, he's taken a queen. This looks like an idea from the Queen's Gambit. It's not, of course, because the d pawn hasn't moved. But where you can jump the knight up, sacrificing the queen, and then you have some sort of an attack here. So check forces him here. And then that actually is checkmate. All right, so moving along, 15. We've got a nice, very nice kind of pawn setup. There's a lot of space on this side of the board where our king is, but where his king is as well. Our king's probably a little bit safer. Our pieces have a lot of free activity, and in fact, this move right here is supernatural. Comes with a nice threat, potentially. You know, this move is very natural. This move, this move, this move, they're all very natural. What's best, however, isn't always just what's natural. So we could give this check right here. This would be his only defense. Okay, giving up the rook. I think we're happy to take a rook. Here we don't have this, but we do have this. And this check is, in fact, mate. All right, this is an endgame. This move comes to mind immediately. In fact, yesterday's puzzle streak ended on puzzle 17. It was an endgame puzzle, and it had to do with the concept of Zugzwang. I think that's what this is going to be as well. If we move the king here, this piece can't move, this piece can't move, these pieces can't move. If the king wants to move, it can only move sideways or backwards. And we've got the active king. If he moves sideways, then the question is, what do we do? If he moves sideways, I suppose we can go to the opposite side of where he goes. So let's first look at him moving to the f3 square. We could go here. And then I suppose he could come here, but he drops the pawn. There'd be really no way for him to hold the pawn after king d4. Similarly, if he comes here, then we go to f4. Then he can hold the pawn, but we're up here. So that's good. Okay, in this scenario, we've got to check. We've got to check which forces his king to recapture. And after the king recaptures, we have another check, which doesn't necessarily force anything. Either if his queen came back, we would take the queen, he takes back, and then we take the knight. And I think we're up a pawn there. We're up a pawn there. We could just take the knight immediately. We could take the knight immediately for sure. Or we could take first and then take the knight. And that would be okay as well. What else have we here? I don't think there's any sense in giving a check. Is there any sense in castling? Well, not really, even if it were legal, which it's not. So why don't we just take the knight? Take the knight, he takes a pawn. So let's not let him take the pawn. Oh my goodness me. All right, guys, well, didn't do particularly much better than last night. Didn't actually consider queen d2 check, forcing him here, and then queen f2 checkmate. So 18 is the new score on the board. Not particularly fantastic, but it is what it is. I will be back shortly with another training game video where hopefully I will take a little bit more time in each position and hopefully play a little bit better. But once again, this elusive 50 correct puzzles continues to evade us. And hopefully we're going to rectify that situation very soon. And we're going to start consistently achieving 50 correct puzzles in a row. All right, well, until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the training video. Here we go. See ya.